This is something I meant to do a little while back and put these videos up for Fleet Week here in New York, but I got kind of behind on stuff. But I wanted to take a look now that there's several releases out for each of the factions and kind of go over which faction's strength and weaknesses are. A little bit of tactics and strategy and whatnot. Best place to start off is the Federation. They have the most releases out of any faction so far. And don't have the nifty DS9 model because I didn't win one. And I'm not going to spend $200 to buy one. But I do have the token. That's more of a casual thing anyway. You're never going to run into those in a real game unless you're playing some kind of scenario, just because of the way it's played. But as for the rest of the stuff, you've got your Galaxy class Enterprise Ds. You've got the Nova class, which was a OP ship, the Sutherland. There's the Reliant, which is a Miranda class. And they're kind of small the way I have the camera set up. But then you have our the Equinox. And you've got Voyager, the Excelsior, the Defiant, the Peregrine Fighters, and the TOS Enterprise. They definitely have a lot of variety in ships, some more useful than others. The Galaxy class, the named version with its 360-degree arc, is a good ship, while the generic is kind of a boat. I think it should have all had the 360-degree arc. I think personally the best ones out of here, if you're going to run swarm ships, the Reliant is a good deal, just because the massive fire arc. It has a 180-degree front fire arc and a 90-degree rear fire arc. So, I mean, as long as that's armed with a front and rear weapons, you can shoot pretty much any direction. I saw a fleet of 5 of those do quite well. My personal picks out of everything, yeah, the Excelsior definitely stands out to me as one of the best. The 180-degree front fire arc plus the rear arc gives it a wide field of fire similar to the Miranda, but it has a little bit more punch to it, a little bit more survivability. It's just an all-around good ship. The named Voyager is an excellent ship. Nice amount of potential there. I may go with 2 Voyagers instead of one Voyager, one generic instead of an Excelsior, but definitely the Excelsior is up there. Defiant can be useful at times. It's a little weak for what it was in the show. I would like to see it with a higher attack, or even like a pulse phaser upgrade to give it that higher attack. And definitely the Federation fighters are always a good option. Thanks to Janeway and some other cards that have come out recently, the TOS Enterprise and its ability to ignore auxiliary power tokens has gained a lot more use. Janeway's ability triggers with it nicely. Things like the Borg missiles coming out soon that give you auxiliary power tokens, or the Species 8472 main attack that gives you auxiliary power tokens, that lets you ignore them, so it's a nice counter for those. The main strength of the Federation is going to be in its captains and crew. They have two of the highest captains in the game, which would be Picard and Kirk. I think Picard's slightly better than Kirk. I'm going to get some bad hate feedback for that, but I never liked the original Star Trek anyway. I like Next Generation to begin with. But his ability is a lot more useful. It gives you that free action. You can take a free scan, evade, target lock, or battle stations every turn on top of your normal action for your ship. Action economy is definitely useful in this game. He has 1 elite talent, where you have Kirk, who has 2 elite talents and makes them cost less. And you don't have to reveal them, which is good, especially if you're playing against somebody with Khan or something like the assimilation tubules from the Borg. I don't believe they can steal a face-down card. I may be wrong on that, but I know Khan can't steal a face-down card. So, but definitely the 9s are good captain skill. You have an 8 in Janeway now, and her ability is pretty nice. They trickle down from there. I actually have them in order. I don't know why Cisco was so low at a 6, but definitely some good captains in there. They have a lot of neat abilities. But the main key for Federation is going to be your crew. And that's what's always stood out in the shows and everything. And you have excellent crewmen like Montgomery Scott, who gives you bonus attack dice or can repair shields. Miles O'Brien can repair shields. 7 of 9 can steal things. I mean, there's a good variety of crew for any situation you can put on board. Some not as useful as others, but definitely a lot of useful ones in here. Sulu gets a lot of use. I use Data a lot, especially if you put Data on a Defiant, he's pretty fun. Definitely, though, the crew is where the Federation excels. And then you even have the special crewmen like the Doctor. They can be used as crew or tech upgrades. And they give you a variety of different things. The Doctor is definitely an interesting one. Your main goal in playing Federation is you're probably going to be outgunned. The Federation attack values are kind of weak, but at the same time you're going to have those crewmen who are going to let you buff up your ship's abilities to be on par, if not better than your opponents. You also have a wide variety of secondary weapons available to you. Antimatter Mines are a great way to deal with cloaked ships. And unlike other mines in the game, these ones can be dropped directly on top of an enemy ship, guaranteeing you at least to hit that turn. The turn that you drop them, you can also use things like Scotty to boost the damage. So it makes them really useful. Secondary torpedo launchers, which came with the Sutherland. Excellent weapon. They basically, if you fire a torpedo, it lets you shoot these at the same target as a free action after that the first one resolves. So kind of nice. The Photon Torpedoes are pretty standard, nothing spectacular. Quantum Torpedoes can pack quite a bit of punch. I know a lot of people don't much care for torpedoes, but the Federation's probably the only faction I would use them in, just because of the lower attack values and the free actions that you're going to get, so you're going to be able to rearm them and get your target locks. And then the Transphasic, I'm not sure how I feel about Transphasic yet. If they weren't a discard, I would definitely be interested in them. The fact that they're only one use and there's ways to cancel attacks means that you could spend the points on these and fire it just to have it do nothing. And at 10 points a pop, they get pretty pricey quickly. Granted, they can only be put on Voyager, so it kind of limits how many you're going to bring anyway. But you can't knock that 10 attack dice. And then the Federation have some couple interesting tech upgrades. The ablative generator is a newer one. It came with Voyager. The downside is when it's active, you don't have a shield, but it gives you an extra 5 hull, and you pretty much ignore criticals while you got it. So until that 5 hull's gone and it goes away. Some other interesting ones. Navigational deflector is a good way to deal with mines. What else we got in here? Cloaking device, kind of situational. Nice on the Defiant. A little overpriced on some of the other ships, but gives you the same abilities as other cloaking ships at the cost of an extra action, because you have to re-enable it. Transwarp gets a lot of good use on, especially on scenario missions where you have to get to an objective quickly. Saw a lot of use in the Dominion Warplay once it came out for people trying to take the station or take a planet, things like that, where you had to get in range quickly. And then the Positron Beam has its uses, dishes out auxiliary power tokens. There's a lot of things that do that nowadays, but it can be useful. One of the interesting things is by using this, you're giving your opponent an auxiliary power token. You pretty much know the next maneuver they're going to be is a green one to clear it. So it kind of lets you set things up for a future turn. And of course, some of the most useful elite talents that have come out yet are all Federation. Engage is a nice one, lets you maneuver some of these ships like the Galaxy class that aren't very maneuverable. So lets you take a second action, move action, that you can use to get yourself into better positioning. The Corborite maneuver can save you from being attacked for a turn. The Cochran Deceleration maneuver I see getting used a lot on things like the Galaxy class because it can't turn around very well. The thing handles like a freight train. This gives you that option to do a come about at the cost of an auxiliary power, which is definitely worth it on that ship. This is a good one to keep in mind with the arena fight OP coming out, because there's a really cheesy loophole in the rules, which I'm sure you'll find some people taking advantage of, where after the ground fight you get to replace all the stuff in orbit, and people are going to put your ship facing the corner at range 1 away from the corner, in which case if you can't pull a Type 1 turn or a come about 2 maneuver, you're going to fly right off the edge of the board. So this will let, you know, the people with the slightly less maneuverable ships be able to pull that off. I still think the whole idea of putting them in the corners is cheesy, but it is allowed in the rules. Cheat Death, really good card. See it get a lot of use. Basically, when you die, you come back with 1 hull point. I did see somebody use this, unfortunately, in one of the OP events to head the turrets, only to be brought back in front of a turret and get shot by the turret and blow up. But it does have its uses. Attack Pattern Omega is another good one. If you get a opponent hull damage with a critical, you can go through the deck and give them a warp core. This on a turn 1 or 2, usually turn 2 is when you can get engaged, but I've seen this get put on one of the big ships like a Negvar on turn 2, and it's just lethal. Disobey Orders, another one that came with the Sutherland. It basically lets you discard this to change whatever action you chose for the turn. So whatever token you have next to your ship, you can swap it out for a different token. Kinda has situational uses, but let's say you chose Evade and turns out nobody's in range or in fire arc to shoot at you. It's kind of a wasted token, so you can discard this to give yourself a scan or a battle stations, which you can use to make your own attacks that turn. And then we have our Federation flagship. Free battle stations is always nice. I think almost every, if not every, Federation ship has battle stations, so you're going to be getting that as a free action. And the ability for your friendly ships within range 1 to 2 to reroll their defense is nice. And of course you get the extra crew slot, which is great for Federation. And the stat bonuses. One of the better ones, not sure how often I would use it. I don't usually play Federation, but definitely a perk to them. Gives you much needed attack value, which the Federation ships seem to lack. But again, their strength is in their captains and crew, and the extra crew slot on here is definitely going to help you. All in all, the Federation's a very viable faction. You're definitely going to be relying on your high skill captains to allow you to take your actions and attacks first. You're going to be relying on your crewmen to boost up your stats so that they're a more competitive level. A lot of times you're going to be relying on your secondary weapons to do the extra punch and damage that you need. Most all of the Federation ships have a rear fire arc, so you're going to be using that rear fire arc a lot, especially with things like mines and torpedoes. It's the one faction I think you'll see torpedoes used in, basically because of the free actions to rearm them, because of the fire arcs that they have. And a lot of them, like the Galaxy class, have that low turning value, so you could shoot at them on the way in, and then after the initial joust, while you're doing your turnaround, you have your torpedoes in the back. At least you can defend yourself, or mines, or whatever you decide to put on there. It's a fun faction. I've played them several times. I've done quite well with them. Their fighters are really nice, a little bit lower attack than the Cardassian ones, but that extra shield on each one of the tokens definitely helps them in survivability. You basically have to do 2 damage to them just to knock out a single one each round. And you have to do that, what, 4 or 5 times to knock them out, so. And a little annoyance, they're kind of fun. But yeah, it's probably going to be the most popular faction due to being the heroes, quote unquote, of the show. But definitely got a lot of variety. We're going to see a lot more Federation ships coming out. I think there's one in almost every release. So Mirror Universe ones are coming out here soon too. So they're their own faction though. But I'll give you some more alternatives. And if you haven't seen them, I don't know how well the lighting's going to work on these, but the blue Federation bases are really nice. Under good lighting, these things like glow. That basically the color of the targeting arcs there on DS9, they look really neat. Downsides to playing Federation: your offenses are going to be slightly weaker than the other races. Chances are you're going to have less ships, unless you're playing some of the smaller swarm ships. Federation build usually ends up with 2 heavily built ships, possibly 2 in a support, or if you're going stripped down, you can get 3 to 4 ships in there. So you're going to be outnumbered. You're usually going to be slightly outgunned, but they have enough other things to make up for it. Anyway, Federation, decent faction, the keystone of the actual Star Trek universe, so you're definitely going to see them out there, and there's definitely ways to deal with them. They have some good offensive abilities, they have some weaknesses that you can take advantage of, and I'll see you in the next video.